Before we start, Robert, I would like to acknowledge that I am in London, Ontario, on ancestral Canadian land. I'm Danielle Metz.
I'm Robert Vaughn, and I give thanks to my ancestors who cleared the wilderness and the savage jungle that we would have inhabited had they not come over here and made this place comfortable and luxurious.
And this is the Danielle Metz Show. Quote, "Every step of the way, we will stand up for Canadian workers, we will stand up for good jobs right across the country, and we will do so in a way that is consistent with our values, with our expectations, and with the rule of law." This is the mantra that has been uttered in various incarnations by Justin Trudeau and members of his office in response to challenges regarding a fairly significant scandal involving a company called SNC-Lavalin. The Coles Note version of this scandal reads as thus. SNC-Lavalin was charged by Canadian authorities with bribing Libyan officials to the tune of about $48 million and defrauding various companies.
And hookers, don't forget the hookers.
The hookers. Yeah, the hookers. Well, that's what they're doing. They're standing up for Canadian jobs. They also apparently defrauded various companies for about $130 million, all between 2001 and 2012. The company expected a deferred prosecution agreement, a DPA, which essentially would mean that they admit, yeah, you got us, and they'll just pay a fine, but not receive a criminal conviction. And a criminal conviction would prohibit SNC-Lavalin, Canada's largest construction company and one of the largest in the world, from bidding on any governmental contracts in Canada for 10 years. But they didn't get the agreement and threatened to leave the beloved home province of our Prime Minister, taking thousands of jobs with him, which wouldn't look good in an election year. So allegations have been made that members of the Prime Minister's office, and even the Prime Minister himself, had placed pressure on Canada's then Attorney General in order to overturn the decision of the Director of Public Prosecution, and when she didn't, she was removed from her position. Liberals keep assuring us that this is about Canadian jobs, when in fact it's about getting power and keeping it. So, Robert, can Canada now officially apply for its Banana Republic card?
That's an interesting remark because my daughter-in-law, of course, is from Brazil, and that country is rife with corruption and quite noted for it. And I had the news on this morning and listening to Justin Trudeau's supposedly contrite speech, which wasn't contrite at all. And
the one where he said, "I have an apology to give, but it's to the Inuit."
Yeah. So she runs upstairs and is wrapped in the television. I said, "How come you're paying so much attention to this?" She says, "It's a Canadian scandal. I've never heard of such a thing before." So yeah, of course she wasn't around here when we had the ad scam, the
sponsorship
scandal, the Mike Duffy scandal, and all those. But I'm going to refer to those later on because they're important. Interesting note that yesterday the New York Times chimed in, and what was the name of their article? They said, "Canadian politics aren't cute, they're corrupt." That's true, and they were never cute either.
Yes. They think so little of us, it's kind of funny. Or sad, I don't know.
There's a lot of things in this particular scandal, and it is a scandal that I'd like to tease out because while I'm not a lawyer and I don't know the technicalities of it or whether or not Trudeau or any of the other 11 people named by Jody Wilson-Raybould, the Attorney General, did anything criminal. Certainly they did something inappropriate according to her, and there's no doubt about that. And it's going to really affect them in this election year. Just as with the sponsorship scandal, when was that? 2003 and 4. 2004, the Liberals were under the sponsorship scandal where people were paid to do stuff and never did it. And of course, they're all Liberal contributors, and there was a lot of nasty business going on involving Jean Chrétien. And the Liberals were dropped from a majority to a minority. And of course, in 2015, the Mike Duffy scandal was going on. He is a senator who was exonerated of all criminal 31 charges against him, I think, over making false claims for...
Yeah, expense report, essentially.
Yeah, he had to maintain a house in Prince Edward Island for the purposes of being a senator, and so he declared that as his primary residence. Anyway, it went on, criminal charges, all that, and it went over the election period of 2015. And of course, Harper lost, and undoubtedly he lost because of this particular scandal. So these
Which
scandals,
wasn't a scandal, it was a non-scandal.
It was a non-scandal, but that's typical of the left, isn't it? And I thought at the time that they purposely dragged it out because they could have ended that before the election.
I'm sure there's some Russian collusion in there as well.
Yeah. But they did deliberately, in my mind, drag it out over the election period, and therefore the Harper government lost. So it's very interesting now that the Trudeau government has a scandal in an election year, but unfortunately, like they say, the memories of the electorate are very, very short.
And this is a very convoluted scandal, and the details, that was the hardest part I had tackling this, was there's so much information here, and you have to know the law. It helps if you're a lawyer, and you have to know what the statutes are and all this stuff. So for the layperson, it's just like, what's going on? I don't understand what the scandal is. So there were some conversations that happened. But they don't realize the implication of what those conversations represent.
It doesn't matter. In the mind of the electorate, all they know is that Justin Trudeau is involved in a scandal of corruption, that he had some bad judgment in the naming of people around him, including Gerald Butts, Katie Telford, Chief of Staff, and Jody Wilson-Raybould, even though Jody Wilson-Raybould is coming out quite smelling roses in this particular instance. A lot of people looked at her testimony as I did and said, boy, she's a really credible witness.
And also a very brave person to put her career at stake like that.
She not only put her career at stake, she then resigned as a Minister of Veterans Affairs and now sits as a backbencher and giving up a lot of money and prestige and power.
Yep.
So you have to take that and put it against Gerald Butts, the Principal Secretary, who resigned, but he resigned for a different reason, it seems. He resigned to... Why would anybody... If she was charging him, basically, with doing something inappropriate, so he resigned. Now, you're thinking he's going to fall on the grenade to protect the Prime Minister, his buddy for 20-odd years. But there's another theory out there that he resigned to cover his butt, so to speak.
He has the most unfortunate or applicable name. I don't know which...
There's some great headlines surrounding him and his name, yes. But
hot seat.
Let's go through a couple of the details. Like I say, the details don't matter to the electorate.
No.
The damage is already done to the Justin Trudeau government. It doesn't matter. Even if everybody's exonerated, anybody walks away, there is a smell of scandal surrounding the Liberal government.
But when is that different from any other time? So I don't know. I'm not sure this is actually going to stick for too long because they're the Liberals.
Well, Liberals will always vote Liberal. Conservatives will always vote Conservative. It's that grey middle that are going to be affected by this. And Canadian politics being what they are. Remember, Trudeau only got elected by 26.1% of the eligible electorate. So a couple of points swing either way, and he could be out of there. Party decimated, or he could get a minority government. Who knows? He may even come back into power majority.
And we also have the People's Party to consider as well. That may be playing an issue in this. So
it didn't seem to make much of an effect in the 3 recent by-elections, but we'll see what happens. Butts has said that he was offering the Attorney General his opinion. And I just went back into some of the sponsorship scandal, and I found that the Gomery report, he was the justice overseeing the whole scandal, made this comment. He says, the expression of an opinion to a subordinate official by the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff at that time, Wright I think his name was, or the minister, amounts to an order. So if you're in a position of power, and the principal secretary to the Prime Minister is like probably the number 3 guy in the country, if not 3 or 4 guy in the country as far as power goes, and he calls the Attorney General and says the Prime Minister is in a mood and this is what he wants.
Yep.
That's an order according to Justice Gomery from the sponsorship scandal. That's an interesting take.
I also understand that he didn't swear an oath when he went to testify before the committee. He said, I promise to tell the truth, but he didn't swear an oath. That was noted by Michelle Rempel, I believe. And I noticed when he was testifying, he smiled an awful lot. The smile of a guilty person who thinks he's getting away with something. I
Well,
just found it was very smarmy.
the smarmy is the adjective that always goes with Liberals. That is, they are the party of arrogance. They are the party of corruption. You just have to go back in time to find that out. But they are always the party of arrogance, of smarminess, if you will. And so, of course, Gerald Butts is smarmy. And they always look good in smarmy. Just to consider some of the details, apparently, according to the law, and again, I'm not a lawyer, it's against the law for anybody to suggest that the Attorney General change her mind for economic interests.
Yes.
And Butts, in his testimony, basically said that he was giving his opinion to give her data on economic interest, the supposed 9,000 jobs that would be lost if SNC-Lavalin moved to London, England.
Yeah, that's why they keep they're playing the jobs card all the time. That's like the opening quote I read out that was by Justin Trudeau himself in response to Michelle Rempel asking about the prostitution payments that were made, and he comes up and goes, "Oh, we're just here to protect Canadian jobs." Well, if you're gonna if you're pressuring the Attorney General for jobs, that's illegal.
Yeah.
So, thanks for admitting it right out. And it's just such a long, convoluted story. I'm not sure it's going to wrap up before the election. What do you think?
Well, I hope not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to see Trudeau and then get kicked out. That'd be fine by me.
Hopefully.
It's interesting that after she made up her mind and let everybody know that, hey, look, my mind is made up, what do? They continue to badger her and browbeat her several times, dozens of times since September when she said she made up her mind.
Well, Gerald Butts said he was unaware that she'd made up her mind because she hadn't made it clear to him.
Yeah, that's another thing that's funny, because Butts and Trudeau, in his apology speech, said that the Attorney General sees things differently than we did.
Yes, I was just going to say, we know that two people can see the same thing in different ways. And I'm like, isn't that what Trudeau used when he was caught groping that reporter? Oh, I can understand she could have seen the situation in a different way than I saw it. Oh, that's right. So there's two realities at play here. And there's our reality and there's your reality. And our reality works better because it keeps us in power, which is what they said repeatedly.
Yeah. Another one is the votes. It's unbelievable, this guy, Justin Trudeau, in Parliament, when all of the Conservative opposition, or even the NDP opposition, by the way, in the end, some of the NDP opposition have been sounding pretty reasonable on this one. They get up there and...
That shows you how bad it's gotten.
Yeah. But they get up and they ask, of course, the Prime Minister the questions about this scandal, and all he does is get up there and parrot the exact same line over and over again about jobs. What about Alberta? Alberta lost maybe 100,000 jobs because
is what
of
I saw.
The Liberal government's energy policy.
Yep.
He doesn't give a damn about jobs. It's only votes, and it's only in his area, which is Montreal. That's where he's from, the riding of Papineau. That's where SNC-Lavalin...
Which he kept reminding the Attorney General, oh, I'm from the riding of Papineau.
And there's an election this year. Yeah.
Gee, yeah, there's no implied pressure there at all. None whatsoever.
No, none
it's
at
all
all,
in to sit above board. It has nothing to do with, as I say, we may have good policy, but it's really about getting elected.
Another thing is, and this fits in with the Alberta connection, is that a large part, I think it's 49%, but I could be incorrect on that data, I haven't looked it up, is owned by, of SNC-Lavalin is owned by the Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
20% is owned by the Quebec pension fund. There's a lot of power invested in this company that was founded in 1911. So it's been around for a long time.
There was two different ones. There was SNC and there's Lavalin, and they merged in 1991. And what I found was actually kind of funny. I think it was Lavalin. I can't remember which one. It was either SNC or Lavalin. They founded the Weather Network in Canada.
Oh, did they?
Yes, the most useless station ever, because all it does is propagate propaganda, because they always talk about climate change and the rest of that stuff, and they never get the weather right. It's the most useless station. I just thought that was a little funny side note.
It makes me think, though, that whether you or not you like the Weather Channel, a lot of people do, and I'm sure that when SNC-Lavalin do their projects, it's mainly construction, that they do a good job, because they do hire a lot of people and a lot of good people. And unfortunately, if this goes sour for them and they do move to London, England, a lot of disruption will happen to people, good people who don't deserve it, to be associated with this corrupt government. And the World Trade Organization has an order against them,
Yep.
and 100 of their subsidiaries saying that you're too corrupt to ask for help from the World Trade Organization or to be involved in any of our projects because they're corrupt, and one of the most corrupt companies in the world.
Yeah, that's saying something. And the thing is that this new law, this Deferred Prosecution Act, was part of a budget bill that Justin Trudeau's government brought in, and that SNC-Lavalin was going to be the first company that got to use that little option of being able to go, yeah, we did it, but we don't get criminally charged or fined or convicted. So I thought that was interesting. And that what actually stopped this whole thing was Stephen Harper, after the sponsorship scandal back in 2006, when he first came to power, he invented the Director of Prosecution's position, which is made that if the Attorney General overrode that person's opinion, it had to be made public in the Canadian Gazette, which is where all the federal decisions are made public, available to the public. So he actually kind of set a trap that the Liberals just fell into. That's how it's been described by a lot of pundits in a lot of places. And the weirdest part about this whole scandal is people who always covered for the Liberals, the CBC, even just local radio, they're all talking...
Maclean's.
Yeah, Maclean's are all talking negatively about this. And like, oh, well, the Sunny Ways has got left and he got by on his, what was one of the things, his verbiage porridge and his smiles, and it's no longer working. And the media that he pays. And Katie Telford told the Attorney General that if she was uncomfortable, she would have the media cover her, saying that it was proper what she was doing. And now even that media is turning against him. So that lends a little credence that maybe this might not work out well for the Liberals this time around.
Well, we can hope, can't we? Some of the other characters involved in this scandal, of course, are the clerk of the Privy Council, Michael Wernick. And some of his testimony has been very interesting, almost juvenile in what he's been doing. He presented the Ministry of Justice with a whole stack of comments from his Twitter feed, from social media. I'm thinking, the chair of the Justice Committee is saying, like, this is relevant how?
It's like my son turning his homework late. Here's just a bunch of paper.
He basically is crying because he's being cyberbullied. Cyberbullied. Doesn't he understand what social media is all about?
Not only that, there's a block function. Or you just don't have to look. It's all good.
Well, I tell you what, let's just forget about cyberbullying for a change and go back to one of the comments that Gerald Butts said maybe many months ago now, where he basically said that anybody who disagrees with him or the Liberal Party or Justin Trudeau are Nazis. So is the former Attorney General a Nazi, Mr. Butts? Because she saw things differently than you did?
What was the context of that comment? Because I don't recall it.
Again, I think it was social media.
It was just over social media? Older people, they don't get it.
Yes, they should learn to code.
Learn to code. Oh no, this whole channel's going to be demonetized now.
Yeah. Anybody who might tune into the last Just Right episode will learn that I should learn to code. I was kicked off of Twitter for saying learn to code against Justin Trudeau and Michael Wernick. But,
that was actually really where we went wrong. Not the learn to code comment. It's because it's Justin Trudeau. But
anyway, those people, though, Gerald Butts and Katie Telford, Chief of Staff, they have a nasty history too. People forget probably they went under through a scandal when they submitted moving expenses from Toronto to Ottawa that were deemed to be inappropriate and exorbitant, and they had to pay a lot of it back. So this is the kind of people we're dealing with here.
Well, the question about this, I guess, specific scandal is, because it runs so deep, is this just like shining a light on something that's a dark cesspool? Like this has always gone on, and this is just because of Jody Raybould or Wilson-Raybould's courage in standing up to the pressure she was put under. That's the only reason we get to see it, but this is just business as usual?
I'm I'm totally of that mindset. This is business as usual. This is how it's always been done, I think. And it's only because we lucked into having somebody like Jody Wilson-Raybould as Minister of Justice and Attorney General that this has come to light. And kudos to the Globe and Mail reporter who busted it as well. What was his name? I think it was Fife, wasn't it?
I believe so. It was surprising it was the Globe and Mail. Because
he's also the one who busted the Mike Duffy scandal and the $90,000 check from the chief of staff under Harper to Mike Duffy. But again,
so he's not, at least he's not partisan then, if he's willing to go against either party. That's good. That's what you want in a journalist.
That's exactly what we want. I'm glad to hear it, yeah.
Yeah, at least we have some clarity in this country still, and we have clarity here on the Danielle Metz Show. So take care, behave yourself, and we'll talk soon. Cheers.